brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys.
Hey there, and welcome to this Sips episode. I am one of your hosts here at the table. Forgot the intro.
And now it's sippin' time.
Hey there, and welcome to this Sips episode. This is good old boy Mike here at the table, one of the hosts that are going to be on our episode. Our Sips episode are all about everything good in life that is worth discussing. I think we've already had a few discussions already about, everybody at least should be exposed to good Monty Python skits before they're age 12. So we're thinking, Sparky.
It's the proper way to parent.
I agree. We should definitely absolutely should have favoritism in British humor right up front. Well, this is a 1 hour show that's actually mildly entertaining for about 22 minutes. We have a really great lineup of hosts here for this show. Let me introduce everybody. First up is good old boy Sparky.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
We have good old gal Julieanna.
Hey, everyone.
We have good old boy Jason.
Good to be here.
Good old boy Greg.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here.
Good old boy Harmeet.
Holla. Hola.
and Maid Man Bob.
It's always good to be here.
So I want to introduce some of our guests and that are joining us with some other activities they have related to Sips. Bob is joining us from the Bourbon Mafia. Bob, why don't you take a minute and tell everybody a little bit about the Bourbon Mafia?
The Bourbon Mafia is a nonprofit organization composed of high-end bourbon enthusiasts and members of the spirits and service industry. We have representation in 10 states, and we raise money for local and national charities through rare bottle auctions and other bourbon theme events. And you can read a little bit about us in the most recent issue of Bourbon Review.
Thank you. Sparky is joining us from a blog that he writes called Parenting While Intoxicated. Tell everybody about your blog there, Sparky.
Well, I think there's really no way to get through parenting without being intoxicated. But,
or good Monty Python skits.
That's also an important aspect of it. But no, my writing partner and I both write a lot about what it's like to survive parenting with the help of booze. And we haven't lost custody of any of our children yet, so that's good.
Oh, that's a good thing. I'm glad to hear that, So no children's services groups have visited you in the last few weeks.
It's only a matter of time. The clock is ticking.
As soon as they find out that there is a resource. Greg is joining us from a bourbon. He's joining us from a blog that he's been writing for several years called The Bourbon Dork. Greg, take a minute and share with our audience a little bit about your blog, The Bourbon Dork.
Well, I started Bourbon Dork back in 2009 as an extension of my personal passion for all things bourbon. But over time, my interest expanded into other world whiskeys, so now my musings cover multiple whiskey-related posts.
Thanks. That's really great. Well, our Sips segments are all about wine, distilled spirits, tea, and coffee. Today's show is all about whiskey. We've been enjoying sipping and talking whiskey on this show and tell episode. Our theme today is a very cool theme, which is a high-end whiskey show. Now, this is a show that we've been talking about doing for a long time, but we generally don't like to talk about products that are incredibly difficult to find for most of our audience. We have broken out the good stuff. We've tried to contain ourselves to stuff that you can actually still find. You might have to sell off some investments or trade in that second wife to actually obtain some of these products. Many of these things are rare, allocated, only available by the glass at select bars, or you got to know a good bourbon geek around you to get a hold of some of this stuff, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
No knee pads involved?
Well, the best part is the bourbon helps you forget.
I am sorry. Such a bad host.
Okay.
I'll buzz myself. I'm sorry.
The horror.
I know, yeah. Well, here's a short list of what we're going to be discussing today. I'm going to probably mispronounce a couple of these, but hopefully I'll get them all right. Any bets in advance? 1, 2? I'll get dead wrong.
100%.
You guys are way too, all right. So, Yellow Spot, it's an Irish whiskey. Julianna.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. One right. No wrong. I appreciate that, Vanna, for keeping track of that. Julianna brought that one. The Willet Family Estate 17-year-old bourbon. Sparky brought that one. All right. Let's see. The George T. Stagg from 2014 is the one that Jason brought for today. Michter's bourbon, the 2015-20 year. I brought that one. Go ahead. Just keep it
Michter's.
down. Michter's.
You like to say Michter's. You drop the T.
I know. Yeah. See, I knew that I couldn't get through this episode without even butchering the name of the very product that I brought.
We haven't even gotten to the Scotch yet.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the hard ones yet. We're still on the American names.
I know, yeah.
Hold tight,
so
folks.
Michter's.
Monty Python earlier is dropping his knickers, too.
What? Yeah, I was about to say, what's my penance for not pronouncing it correctly? I have to give up the
I
rest
think you
of
have
the
to
bottle.
lose the bottle.
I knew
I
that
think
that
we
was
take the
coming.
bottle
That
home,
was,
right?
I could see that coming a mile away.
You can't pronounce it. You can't keep it.
Yep. Bruichladdich Black Art Edition number 4. It's a 23-year unpeated Isla that Greg has brought for us. Now, all those big Scottish words I got correctly.
I could not, dude.
You nailed them.
Thank you.
It's Michter's, but you nailed black.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Glenmorangie Signet. Ooh, how about that? I'm really blazing along well here. And the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. It's a private label blend that Bob has brought for us today. Those are all the products that we're going to discuss on this fabulous episode discussing high-end whiskeys on the Show and Tell show, and each of us has brought something. Now, would anybody care to speculate what would be the title of this episode?
Second Mortgage.
Second Mortgage. That's a good choice. I like that. Any other good choices?
Expensive Addictions.
Expensive Addictions. I like that. Those are all good titles. Well,
Why I no longer sleep in my own bed.
yeah, there you go.
That anyway.
Bitch took all my brown juice. That's what the name of this episode is called. Yep. Yeah. Well, I was thinking about my big brown bottle is better than yours. So, but I knew that one of those was going to come around. We'll see which one of those winds up being the case.
My kids go to public school, but daddy drinks fancy whiskey.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a thing.
So, Greg is actually our newbie on this episode today, and I'm going to ask him to read our SIPS rating today using the voice of Howard Cosell or any favorite sportscaster of his choice. Take it away, Greg.
Okay, so I guess this is part of the hazing ritual for the new guy. Okay, Howard Cosell. We'll be tasting and discussing these whiskeys and rating them with these SIPS ratings plus our signature sounds. Here are those ratings now. 1. Give me a glass of water to wash out my mouth.
Gangazine, water. Gangazine, bring water. Bring water.
2. Nice, but what else do you have?
Well, isn't that nice?
Missed one there. Keep going.
3. Interesting. What was this again?
Interesting.
4. Let's keep this a secret to ourselves. Pour me another.
That's classified.
5. Oh my, I was unaware anything could be this good.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah!
Very good reading, Greg. I appreciate you introducing our SIPS ratings for today. Well, the host has brought the product that's going to introduce us their product, and a couple of us are going to be sharing and tasting our ratings as we go along. It's going to be super fantabulous. Well, listen, we're going to have just a quick moment here to allow Julieanna to introduce her first product here for us. Julieanna, you have brought Yellow Spot Irish Whiskey. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this product for the break here?
That I have. And this is a little guy, but I'm still kind of proud of him. So, Yellow Spot, the one that I brought today, well, it's a 12-year single pot whiskey, and it was produced by Mitchell's. The the wine merchants of Kildare Street in Dublin. So a little interesting, neat story about them is that although it was distilled by Middleton Distillery, they sent it off to Mitchell's for bottling, and in doing so, they had a bunch of casks together in their warehouse. And what they would do is they would dab it with a spot of colored paint to indicate the age. It wasn't just about the distillery, but they would just group it in the warehouse. And that's where they came up with the blue, green, yellow, and red spots, which corresponded to a 7-year, a 10-year, a 12-year, and a 15-year. Now, although delivery ceased to exist in 1960, they recently have revived the brand and have revived the spot.
The days before accountants ruled the world, Jonathan Mitchell's great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, look, you get the idea. They had vast quantities of whiskey maturing deep underground in cool, dark cellars. This whiskey was put into casks that once contained sherry, Madeira, and Malaga after they'd been emptied.
It was a link with the past. We're lucky enough to have old cask books and records going back and handwritten ledgers and so on. So I immediately delved in to have a look to see exactly what was the makeup of Yellow Spot. And we got a lot of information there. There's a reference to some of the casks, the Malaga casks.
Listen, we'll cover the rest of the background here on Yellow Spot in just a second, right after this quick break. Hey, welcome back to Sips, Suds, and Smokes. This is good old boy Mike with a host of folks today. We're all talking about a show and tell episode on whiskeys, and we have brought in a bunch of high-end whiskeys to talk about today. We were going over some background on Yellow Spot and kind of cut Julieanna off. So, Julieanna, can you pick it up from where you were?
Sure. So let's talk about spots. So while these whiskey casks were warehoused in Mitchell's warehouse, they were dabbed with a spot of colored paint to indicate what age they were. Blue, green, yellow, and red were corresponding to the 7, 10, 12, and 15-year whiskeys. So although delivery ceased to exist in 1960, they have recently revived the brand and revived the spots. A few years ago, the green spot was released, and in 2015, the yellow spot was released to the States. What's interesting about this whiskey is that it is aged in 3 different barrels. The first one is an ex-bourbon barrel, then followed with a sherry cask, and then finally it's aged in a Malaga cask, which used to hold the Jimenez wine. So my tasting notes on this, which I actually think that this is one of my favorite whiskeys that's been produced in a while, you get a lot of sweetness on the nose, which I find really interesting. I get a little bit of honey and a bit of peachiness, and then once I taste it, it is very sweet. It's very smooth. There's a little spicy notes to it, and it's kind of has like a jammy kind of flavor to it. But I really enjoy it, and this is a 4 for me.
Wow, how about that? A 4 right off the bat. Amazing. Great product to go over.
That's classified.
So, Sparky, you wanted to chime in and talk about your tasting notes and ratings on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge Irish whiskey fan, and I love. Do you know off the top of your head, is this a Protestant or a Catholic?
Protestant.
It's a Protestant Irish. So that's a whole story unto itself. But yeah, there's certain brands that Protestants go for, and certain brands that Catholics go for.
So what's Jameson? Do anybody know?
Jameson's Catholic, which is kind of ironic for this.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. But no, I'm a huge Irish whiskey fan. So on the nose, I definitely got the vanilla, the caramel flavors, very sweet, even as you're smelling it, and the taste follows up very well with that. The wood, the character of it is fantastic, and I can definitely pick up the bourbon and the sherry in there for certain, but just really a great, nice, easy sipping. And if I had to, I wouldn't use this for a cocktail. I'd definitely have this neat any day of the week. And overall, I give that a 4.
4 as well. Another great rating. Bob was going to follow up with his thoughts on Yellow Spot as well.
It's a very nice whiskey. It's on the nose. You pick up a little bit of buttery caramel, butterscotch, ripe fruit. On the palate, there's definitely I was surprised. It's just a little hot on the front, jammy, almost port-like. A little bit of hard candy in the back. You can definitely pick up the Malaga wine. The Pedro Jimenez grapes in there, that very distinct jammy character. Medium finish, gave it a 3.
Ooh, a 3. How about that? So I kept on thinking the whole time in the middle of that background, what if the guy that works in the warehouse is colorblind?
I am colorblind to red and green.
Yeah, I know.
That was my nightmares. You were listing that off.
I was thinking, I'm like, oh, laddie, it's the blue barrel up there. It's like, which one is the blue one? So...
Maybe nowadays they have it sectioned off.
And why did they pick those colors? Is there like some alignment with time and, those colors?
Probably just the ease.
That was the paint that was on.
I was going to say, I'm going to go with the truck. I think it's the paint that fell off the truck. It was the dented can. That was the reason why they picked that color.
It's been at Lowe's, yeah.
Well, it's really great to have really good Irish whiskey here at the lineup. Thank you for bringing and sharing that with us, Julieanna. Well, next up is another really great product for us to talk about. It is the Willet Family Estate 17-year-old bourbon. Sparky's brought this, and he's going to introduce this product to everybody.
Yeah, Willet is really, I think, is a very interesting bourbon story right now. I mean, it's inspired revolts, riots. They release bottles now up at the gift shop up in Bardstown, and it's if you ever have a chance to take a trip to Bardstown, it's well worth it.
2 hours, 10 minutes, 17 seconds.
Well, geez, Mike, that seemed awfully practiced. Were you looking at Waze when you quoted that, or was that?
Pretty sure he was going 95 miles.
I am quite certain about that. Well, I think they switch over to kilometers once you get into Kentucky, I'm told. So I think he's probably.
I agree.
He can't really be blamed for any speeding there. But yeah, it's when they release bottles, people go bonkers and they raid this poor little gift shop. There's like a cabal of locals that will buy it up, straw buyers, resell it. I don't know. I've seen a lot of that in the beer world. I've just never seen anything quite like it in the whiskey world. And this particular bottle is one that I bought retail many years ago, and it was actually distilled when I was a sophomore in high school in 1993. So throwing it back there to the real thing, April 6th to be precise there. But there's a lot of speculation, I think, on the source of these. Mike, we were talking about that earlier. Would you explain the difference between the script and block?
Well, so I knew a little bit of the story, and then Jason's going to actually tell us. So the labels on the Willet, the WFE, changed from block to script. It was just a modification, and they used to wax all their tops as well. As they were distributed, and a lot of people speculated that this was actually a change of the actual juice, at some point in time as well. So a lot of people thought that a lot of the block letters were all Stitzer-Weller, and when they switched to script, it could have been, continue to be from Sitwell from a variety of sources. I think at the end of the day, I don't think anybody really knows. Jason, you probably have heard a lot of the tales and woe about this as well.
Well, I can just tell you from owning a product, I'm pretty sure if I had to venture a guess that they found a better label maker who gave them a better deal. I'm just going to put that one out there.
All the mystique
went down to their
so
label
you're
price
saying
went
that
down. And
it's pretty much just the same way that the blue can of paint fell off the truck.
Exactly.
Hey, but it makes a fantastic story when you make your own.
It definitely does. But that's why the bottle shape changes. That's why labels change all the time. They go to different label producers.
They ran out of them, and the guy went to him and said, "Oh, we're out of those block letters. We'll just do it again, but you'll like it better with a better logo anyway."
And duct tape and Sharpie really didn't look so great, honestly.
Now, the story behind this 17-year-old bourbon is a pretty interesting one. So most barrels are either picked by a store or sold in the gift shop, like you said. This barrel was actually picked by a very small distributor here in Nashville and then sold to multiple different stores, which you don't ever see anywhere else in the country. So it's a very interesting story. And the barrel itself, the bottle is, 94 proof, I think is what it was?
That's right, yeah.
Which kind of blows my mind. I almost kind of want to call and ask, but usually Willet bottles are at cask strength,
yeah.
or really, really close to it. This does not seem like it's cask strength, and it might be one of the only ones that aren't cask strength, at least that were sold in America. So very interesting. A lot of mystique behind this bottling.
So, Sparky, what's your sips rating on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I gave it a 5. Man, it's...
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
I doubt I'll ever get another bottle of this again, but well worth it.
And what's your sips rating on this, Jason?
I gave this a 5 also.
5 as well. Well, cool. So we asked Greg to chime in on the Willet as well. Greg, what did you think about the Willet 17 year?
So the nose on the Willet was a little understated, hard to work for a whiff. Entry is easy in and easy down. Absolutely no heat and all sweet candy shop goodness. Brown sugar, nuts, and salted caramel. Very soft bourbon with a finish that rolls off the back of the palate and fades. Sips rating 4.
Well, 4 as well. How about that? Well, it was really great to come back and always enjoy another WFE. So I have one quick question here for my colleague sitting here at the table with me. So you like this as much as the 20 plus, or very different?
So this one's good, but I'm with him. It's a little light. I was torn between a 4 and a 5. It's a little light for me. I prefer the 21s and younger. I think the 22s are over oaked. That's just my personal preference, but it is light. I mean, that is for sure.
Vastly different. I will say that much.
Yeah, vastly different.
Well, let's keep moving right on along. Next up is Jason's going to introduce the George T. Stagg, the 2014 version for us.
So George T. Stagg is a extremely hearty whiskey that ages in new charred oak barrels for no less than 15 years. It's straight out of the barrel, uncut and unfiltered. The taste is powerful, flavorful, and intense. And I read that right off of Buffalo Trace's website. I just wanted to kind of put it in context. The very cool thing about the antique collection with Buffalo Trace is if you buy a 3-pack, then there's a sheet of paper in there. Very few people actually get a full case of antique collection. But you can go online and download a schematic, a little spec sheet on every release that's ever come out. So for this specific bottling of George T. Stagg, the year of distillation was 1998. And it will go through and it will tell you the corn was distiller's grade 1 and 2, that it was Minnesota rye, North Dakota malted barley, that the proof off the still was 135 proof. But the interesting thing to me is that they tell you exactly what warehouses they came from. They tell you that it was 161 hand-selected barrels, and that the evaporation loss, that's what I always look at. The evaporation loss was 74.8%.
Wow.
So,
that's a huge angel share.
Absolute huge angel share. All Stagg has a huge angel share. So this specific bottling, 16 years and 4 months old. When you taste it, and I'm going to revisit right now. Dark chocolate, vanilla, and coffee. I mean, it is my favorite whiskey in the world. And I always, whenever I taste this, the picture that comes into my head is just like the cowboy out west drinking whiskey. He's about to go right off into the sunset. That's what I get every single time.
Your sips rating?
100% 5. If I could go above, I would.
What?
So there are a couple other folks that are going to chime in. Julieanna, you were going to share your tasting notes on this.
First of all, I want to make a perfume out of this because the aroma itself is just, it's stunning. And
so
it's
hot.
Don't fall over if you're wearing that cologne.
No, it is. But then, like, after the first sip, I'm like, this is a cocktail in my mouth. I don't need anything else. I'm getting a really nice amount of spiciness. I'm getting dark chocolate, and I got this like cherry note at the back that just sat there and just sort of like blended everything together. It's just absolutely stunning. And yeah, your picture of like the Marlboro Manny kind of guy, you know, that's to a T.
That was really lame.
Yeah,
it's okay. Sergio Leone's got nothing on you, sir.
I think I just got the picture of the tumbleweed going across the screen right there.
Exactly. But this is a 5 for sure.
It's cool.
Clint Eastwood is crying.
Oh my goodness.
Sparky, you were going to chime in about the George T. Stagg 2014 as well.
Yeah, man, it smells like a funky adventure, and I don't know about the cowboy analogy, but I think that I got run over by a stag, and I loved every moment of it. It was fantastic. So spicy and just so long. It ends with... it's almost like a coffee caramel drink, and then I got the dark fruit too, but it's more like a berry kind of, like maybe a raspberry or blackberry kind of thing at the very end there. But it just keeps going for hours and never wanted to stop. Can you guys like not look at me for a little while? I need a little bit of alone time.
Yeah.
No judging, right? This is radio. We're safe. Suds rating or sips rating of a 5 easily.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, there you have good coverage of a great selection from Buffalo Trace and the George T. Stagg. Always a real pleasure to always cover that product. Thank you, Jason, for bringing that. It was really awesome again.
Yeah.
So next up is the product that I brought. It is the Michter's Bourbon 20-year. See, I did that
There's
nice
that
and
tea. That was
I
nice.
know. I did it nice and slow just for you, man.
That was even after drinking. Good job.
I know,
Mike.
yeah.
Do we have a slow clap?
I know. Can I go to advanced? Maybe I can go to the advanced group therapy class next week.
Yeah, you'll need it.
Our boys all grows up.
Can we use the red blocks today? So this is the 2015 version, and here's a quick overview on this. And then we'll probably take a quick break right after this as well. So we chose the Michter's 10 as one of the best picks for 2014. And that bottle continues to deliver extraordinary enjoyment. This is actually the 20-year bourbon created by Michter's master distiller, Willie Pratt. His nickname is Dr. No. By Michter's sales force due to his frequent refusal to release the whiskeys before he believes they have sufficiently matured. Mr. Pratt is a stickler for quality, and the provenance of the whiskey itself is actually a mystery. Dun, 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 just like Willet. And it since the actual distillery closed about 25 years ago. So Michter's is in that gap of writing the brand's heritage, but actually selling both new and source products at the same time. So Michter's is actually owned by Chatham Imports, and their new facility is in Shively, right outside of Louisville. I'm sure we'll actually cover some of the newer products in their lineup on another show, but today it's all about the M20, which is what we have for today. So, yeah, this is definitely pricey. The average retail on this product is about $500. And Unicorn Blood price is hitting 2 and 3 times that multiple, in the marketplace as well. You really have no idea how many of this was actually produced. So I saw some things that they had produced around 500 bottles of this. I saw some other descriptions that were, 1,500, bottles. Nobody really knows, probably other than the distributor. That's about the only person that actually knows. So, when I actually taste this, I'm really kind of blown away by the roundness, its smoothness, and its overall drinkability. It's 117 proof, so that kind of goes down rather easy for something that's probably a bit on the higher proof side. I'm usually not a huge fan of super aged bourbon, so kind of once you get into these, above 12 year and 15 year, there's things can happen magically or things can go horribly wrong. So Jason talked a little about things kind of picking up a lot of wood and kind of becoming over oaked. This doesn't actually suffer from any of that at all. So needless to say, this is a bourbon to treat with a bit of respect, a good chunk of ice or a few drops of water, and it's all you want to add. Choose another bottle if you actually want to make a Manhattan or an old fashioned. Please don't send me any pictures of you, blending this, with something else. I don't appreciate that. It's sacrilege. So while it's rare, you should be able to find this spirits collector. You should be able to find this for the spirits collector in your life for that special occasion. If you act fast. Most of these products are available in the late fall in the U.S., and Michter's tends to actually stage the release several months geographically. In most metropolitan areas, there are usually about 5 bottles on average. So listen, we'll be right back, and I'll cover the rest of the Michter's background in just a second. Hey, welcome back to Sips, Suds, and Smokes. This is good old boy Mike here at the table, and we're going through a wide variety of whiskeys today on this Sips episode. It's a show and tell show. We're talking about high-end whiskeys, and I was introducing a little bit about the Michter's bourbon. It's a 20-year from 2015 release. And so there's a little bit of a cool story kind of behind this, which is, can I use the word stole? I stole this.
Sniped.
I sniped this bottle from underneath Jason's nose in the Middle Tennessee market. There were literally 5 bottles, maybe 8. It all depends on the number you're looking at, but it was definitely a single-digit number. And so I was smiling and dialing, and, I knew exactly where the bottles had, been delivered, and I just looked into a good mutual friend of ours that said, I'm not really quite sure what's going to happen with this bottle. So some of you heard good old boy Lisa on an earlier episode on some of our season 1 on the show. And she runs a really great shop called The Bottle Shop down in Franklin, Tennessee. And she was so kind. She was like, absolutely, Mike, I have a bottle right here for you. Well, there you go. So I dropped by and picked up this bottle. And so I'm sharing some of the, requisite, kill shots, with some of my close friends, including Jason. And he's like, where'd you get that, man? And you're like, that's mine. So it is, it's really great, that we got to, break this out and enjoy it for today. I really enjoy a lot of things in this lineup. I have fallen in love with the 10, and I continue to go back to the 10-year, 2014 quite a bit. I mean, that is just one of the coolest bottles of bourbon that I continue to go back to. So this was something kind of new in my collection. I had tasted this before, but I'd never owned a bottle, and so it's kind of been nice to kind of get to know this. It does have a lot of wood on it. I do like the amount of smoke that is kind of infused with this as well, and that's kind of a little different for a bourbon to say that it's kind of has a smoky quality to it. It's very unique. I probably, at the end of the day, between the 20 and the 10, I like the 10 better. But this is really awesome. My sips rating for the Michter's, see?
There you go.
Michter's 20 is a 4.
We have not been drinking today at all.
Yep.
Nope. We just did that a different day, sobered up, and then did this episode. Because we're professionals, damn it.
So there are a couple other folks who are going to chime in on what they thought about the Michter's Bourbon 20-year. Up first is going to be Harmeet.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Well, I had the privilege of tasting this for the first time on Monday, or about 7 days ago. And I was at a Michter's event in Miami, and I went to meet the CEO of Michter's, and F. Paul Bacall was leading us through a blind tasting of 8 Michter's products. And the 20 is fantastic, but it was not my favorite. That 10-year-old that you talked about was. And when you go back to Willie Pratt, the current master distiller, this 20-year-old actually predates his tenure there at Michter's. So it was the previous distiller. I don't remember his name right now. The new stuff that Willie, well, I say new, but the stuff that Willie makes goes into the barrel at 103 proof. Compare that to the 135 that the Stagg goes in. Very much lower. You've got a lot more congeners. You've got a heavier, oilier style. And that heaviness translates to the bourbon. Whereas this one had to have gone in at a higher proof. It's a lighter style. It was very floral. I got a lot of candied fruit, beautiful spice. I love this whiskey, and I love Willie Pratt because, even though he had nothing to do with this one, but I met him a few years back, and because of that night, we did the math, and I now have a 2-year-old daughter. That night. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, what's your sips rating on this? Harmeet, what's your sips rating on this?
I gave it a 4. I said it 3 times. Are you not hearing me? Are you
Classified.
Got it now. Bob, you're going to chime in about your thoughts on the Michter's 20.
I pretty much fall in line with what Harm said. I pick up, it's got big oak. It's not overpowering. It is definitely very floral. I'm picking up a lot of that. A little bit of fruit on the nose. A damn fine bourbon. I give it a 4.
It doesn't taste like a 20-year-old. It tastes younger.
Classified.
Well, we'll keep moving right along here. Up next is the Bruichladdich Black Art Edition number 4. This is a 23-year-old unpeated Islay that Greg has brought for us. Greg, why don't you introduce this product first?
So I chose this particular expression because I kind of like weird or unique offerings. So I'm not a mainstream kind of drinker, so when the challenge was given as to what I would offer up, I figured this was pretty outside the conventional to make for interesting discussion. When you hear Islay, you think peat, smoke, Band-Aids, and iodine, and maybe hair of wet dog or mossy stone. Bruichladdich, located on Islay, mixes things up a bit and releases some non-peated expressions such as the Black Art line. This particular whiskey comes in at 23 years of age and is the brainchild of former master distiller Jim McEwen, who was with Bruichladdich for over 50 years and retired in 2015. What I like about this whiskey is its very unique profile, and while not a perfect whiskey, is an interesting whiskey, and sometimes that's just fine. The whiskey is an enjoyable pour, exhibiting understated wood notes, mild spice, citrus, and a jammy finish. The whiskey is robust on the palate with a medium to long finish. For your friends and family that is interested in venturing outside the normal Scotch experience, I would say Islay Scotch. This is a nice diversion. Want to know the details of mash bill, cask type, warehouse placement? Well, so do I, but this ain't going to happen. All the details are a secret, and Bruichladdich is not talking. As for price point, you can still find this in the US and the UK markets with an average selling price of around $280. I don't think that's too exorbitant for a decent and unique 23-year-old whiskey. The Bruichladdich, this whiskey exhibited understated wood notes, mild spice, citrus, and a jammy finish. The whiskey is robust on the palate with a medium to long finish. This is a whiskey you could sit and contemplate for quite some time. Sips rating 4.
That's classified.
We forgot something, didn't we there, Lassie? We forgot to fire up the bagpipes, eh?
We did.
Yes.
That sound can actually keep you from having children. That's rarely. Most people don't know that, but it's true.
Is that your form of birth control? Is that what you're saying?
Bagpipes kill sperm.
Okay, all right. Well, just for you, Julieanna, I knew you needed to hear the bagpipes before you chimed in on a really good Scotch here. So
thank you so much, Greg. Thank you so much for bringing this. I am an Islay lover, love, and I was a little hesitant on trying this because I go for the peat. When I hear that there's an Islay whiskey that's unpeated, I kind of freak out. But this was really nice. It was very elegant for an Islay whiskey, and I hate to use that term together because I never think of delicate in any of my Islay whiskeys that I own. But it was a beautiful, beautiful taste, and I gave this a 4.
How about that?
That's classified.
Well, I had a similar experience with this as well. I really, I've had a lot of Bruichladdich, and this was another real treat, and it was really great to enjoy this one. I did find there's a lot of wood and smoke off this as well. It was interesting kind of have this right in line. I actually tasted these in the same order we're talking about them. So to have the Michter's 20 and then to have this, kind of side by side, it was really kind of interesting because to have a couple of things that had smoke on them, but from completely different, product lines, I thought were kind of a little interesting. So, but really great product, and I had a similar sips rating as well, a 4 for the Bruichladdich. So, really great. Thanks for bringing that, Greg, and for sharing that with everyone. Well, up next is going to be Harmeet. He brought the Glenmorangie, a Signet, for us to enjoy. Harmeet, tell us all about this product.
Signet is the higher end of the Glenmorangie range. Their core range is not a private edition or anything, so it's not super hard to find. But I picked this because this is one of the whiskeys I opened at my wedding reception. I love this.
I notice
stuff.
A pattern here.
Yeah, whiskey, wedding, baby. Yeah, that's a pattern.
The bagpipes. Go for the bagpipes next time.
Next time. Hey, I had to get on do this anyway. The whiskey is. This is a special whiskey because it's made from estate-grown barley that's actually grown around Glenmorangie. It's Cadbull barley. The casks that they age this special barley in this whiskey in is made from American white oak. It's hand-selected, slow growth, lightly charred, but heavily toasted. And they age it for at least 12 years, they say. They won't give you age statements on this because if they tell you they're 12 it's a no-age statement whiskey. I heard several different stories about the age, the youngest being 19. I've also read 12. But the core of this basically is this chocolate malted barley. So when you make a big stout like a Guinness, you roast that barley really high temperature and it looks like coffee beans or chocolate beans. And Dr. Lumsden, who makes Glenmorangie, decided that he wanted to experiment with something like this a few years back, and we got Signet out of it because he's got barley that was roasted deep, dark chocolate and then made into whiskey. And that was aged for at least 20 years. And then he added older whiskeys from the stocks that predates his time there in the 30 to 40-year-old range. And those were matured in Oloroso sherry casks, more the traditional way of making Scotch whiskey. Everything was aged in Oloroso sherry at the time. And all this is all married, again, in virgin American white oak. So it's a lot of different things going into this whiskey, and I simply love it.
What's your sips rating for this, Ed?
It's definitely a 5.
How about that? Sparky, you wanted to chime in with your tasting and rating notes.
Yeah, I'm glad to know about the roasted barley part of it because I'll be honest with you, I'm generally not a huge Scotch whiskey fan. This is actually, I wrote in my notes, this is actually a Scotch I would drink. It's really, I love the darkness of it, the very deep, very rich. I totally picked up on the coffee chocolate notes in it. I'd have to give it a 4 easily.
How about that?
That's classified.
And Jason, I know you wanted to chime in with your rating and tasting notes as well.
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate a little bit about what you said. I mean, I pretty much wrote down, I'm going to go buy one of these bottles. But yeah, it's super interesting. Normally you don't see a super sweet, light front end with a dark chocolate finish. Usually you get that on something that's very heavy, very oaky. And this was just freaking fantastic. I mean, it just absolutely was. I mean, you can tell that it's a blend of different years because you're getting the sweetness of something younger, but you're getting that oak of something older. But I mean, it's just, I mean, it is almost perfect. I mean, it really, really is. And I gave this a solid 5.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah!
So my primary goal next week is to beat you to the punch and find this bottle before you.
I've already texted.
Yeah, I knew. I knew I was just a half second behind you, man. Because so we were.
Because of this stuff in my store right now.
Well, we were
for purchase at Fine Spirits in Cooper City.
Oh well, there you go. So,
what's the retail price on this one?
$209, $200, somewhere right in there.
Done.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Wow. Yeah, we were sitting at the tasting table, and I gotta tell you, this was like one of the few bottles that we have sample bottles. We have a full bottle for this, and yeah, we were all fighting over who was going to crawl inside the bottle and lick the inside of the glass because it was that good.
I'm glad this isn't on video. That's
I know.
Thankful for that.
I don't mind.
It got weird.
My sips rating was a 5 as well for this. So, probably it was well worthy of a lot of things. So, last
a cup of water brought out more chocolate. You guys try it that way if you got any left.
We might. I've saved my sample, which is the ultimate compliment.
Mine's gone.
We have one more product to go over, and I want to make sure we have enough time to cover this, which is the product that Bob brought. It is the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. This is a 117 proof.
No, that's the code.
That's
yeah, it's all secret stuff.
Yep.
Super secret stuff.
I'll explain it.
I'm going to let Bob introduce this product, and I'm going to shut up so I, don't trip over my tongue anymore.
Well, Scotch Malt Whiskey Society is a private club that grew out of a few individuals' love of whiskey and a desire to learn more about it. They came to learn how casks that were distilled and filled at the same time and aged for the same length of time could produce very different whiskeys, literally casks next to each other, distilled and filled the same day, have very different flavor profiles. About 30 years ago, they purchased their first cask from a Speyside distillery. I believe it was Glenfarclas. They continued purchasing individual casks and then started bottling them as a single barrel rather than blending multiple barrels. And 30 years ago, single barrel products really didn't exist, so they were kind of on the forefront of that, and that's how the society was born. Each cask that they purchase is reviewed by an expert tasting panel before being purchased. And all the panel's work is performed with no information on age, origin, cask type, anything. It's completely blind to ensure that society whiskeys are always bottled based on their individual merits. They're bottled at cask strength and not subject to chill filtration or any other interference. So members, when they buy bottles, can enjoy their dram basically as if it was coming straight from the cask. It's like standing there and pulling it out with a whiskey thief. The society also labels the bottles based on a code system rather than listing an individual name to further encourage you to judge the whiskey on its merits rather than on a perceived idea of what a particular brand should be. But while it doesn't list the name of the distillery, the label does give a good bit of information that other independent bottlers don't. typically such as date of distillation, date of bottling, the type of cask which it was aged in, sherry bud, ex-bourbon barrels. The coding that they put, the first number is the actual distillery that they have, and then there's a dot, and then the next one that's the number barrel that they purchased, the first or the fifth or the 50th or the 100th. This bottling that we're trying today is actually an Irish whiskey. It was made at the Cooley Distillery. It's 22 years old. Since this is a single barrel product, this is one bottle of 236 bottles that came out of that cask. It is a refill ex-sherry hogshead. It's distilled on the 16th of September 91 and bottled in 2014, and it's 55.5 ABV. The color on it, nice burnished bronze on the nose. I pick up a lot of apple, cherry, dark chocolate, nuts, coconut, cinnamon, sandalwood. On the palate, it's got a great mouthfeel of vanilla, lots of tropical fruit and cherry, toffee and almonds, walnuts, a little bit of currants. Got a great lingering flavor to it. And this is a whiskey. This is one that if you pour a little in a glass, let it sit for 5 minutes and smell it, leave the house, go away, go see a movie, come back 2 hours later and pick it up. It just gets bigger and bigger, the longer it gets oxygen in it. One of my favorites, this one flew off the shelf. Very few into the United States, and very noted whiskey expert here in the U.S. And D.C. I know he picked up 4 or 5 of them. If he buys more than one of anything, I know that I'm doing something right if I'm following him. I gave this a solid 5.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah!
So we only have time for one more quick review. Greg, why don't you chime in about the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society product here that Bob brought for us?
Would it be inappropriate to hug Bob for bringing this bottle?
The Scotch Malt Whiskey Society offering nosing this whiskey, I believe I'm getting some pot still characteristics. Entry is very, very good. There's a lot of things going on with this whiskey. Fruit notes, cinnamon, and chocolate. As I took additional sips, the fruit was almost jam-like. Mid-palate, toward the finish, I get something nutty that I can't put my finger on, then a drawing toward the end. Complex, delicious, clearly some good age. Sips rating totally a 5.
How about that?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah!
Well, that's going to wrap things up for today on all these show and tell products. So thank you, everybody, for all these really great products that you brought for us to enjoy. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and you can catch all of our episodes online as well on SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, PRX, and Spreaker, our native media host. iTunes and our own Android app are the easiest ways to enjoy the show on your phone. Just search for Sips, Suds, Smokes on iTunes or in the Google Play Store. We love your feedback as well, and you can reach us online anytime at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every single day. Our handle on Twitter is @SipSudsSmoke, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. Do us a favor and take the time to rate this episode. If you're listening to us online, that's a great big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well. Please do not rate any of my mispronunciations of Mickers. I knew you'd enjoy that.
Mickers or...
I heard Knickers?
Knickers, yeah. Right, yeah.
Golf pants, right?
Oh, I definitely want to thank all of my co-hosts for being here today. Good old boy Sparky, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
And good old boy Jason.
Good to be here.
Good old gal Julieanna.
Thank you for having me.
Good old boy Greg, thanks for joining us for this.
I had a great time. Thanks for having me, Mike.
And good old boy Bob, thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And good old boy Harmeet.
I'm just here for the whiskey, man.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, listen, it was really great having everybody here. Please come back, join us on another episode, and we'll ask you to keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.